Hoopla, everybody. Now then, this, of course, is a Klingon bird of prey. It has appeared in many movies in the Star Trek pantheon, and, of course, many of the TV series as well. This particular item has a particular significance for me, because it was the first, probably one of the first things, if not the first thing, I ever bought from the Cosmic Toy Man. Now, I didn't know this existed before I went in to Gareth's shop that day. I don't think I even came away with it immediately because I was humming and hawing over what I was going to buy and just generally having a look around the place. But I did come back and pick this up because it's an exceptionally detailed, large version of the bird of prey, and it is electronic. And this, of course, is a Diamond Select / Art Asylum Starship Legends version of the Klingon bird of prey. Now, I'm going to need to measure this up for you again because it is an exceptionally large item. So if I go disruptor tip to disruptor tip here, you are looking at over a foot. You're looking at 13 inches to about 35 centimetres. If you do this, it gets even bigger. So yes, it has variable geometry wings. As you can see, I actually have to move the camera back to get the entire ship into frame now because it is so huge with its wings in the cruise configuration. Now it measures nearly 18 inches, so a foot and a half across and 45 centimetres across. So it is scarily huge when it's in this configuration. The stand is ball jointed, but it's the ball joint isn't actually into the ship itself. It's one of the more modern stands, but it's in the shape of the Klingon emblem, which is also a nice touch from them. It can also do the landing mode with the wings as well. So it does pretty much everything that the movie and TV version of the ships can do, apart from having landing struts. Now, I believe there is a version of this ship, which was the HMS Bounty version, I believe, that does include landing struts, I think. So if you can confirm that for me in the comments, please do so. I don't have that version of it. I've never owned it, so I can't be completely definitive about that for you, I'm afraid. So, what else can I tell you about this? Well, in terms of the actual sort of background of the ship itself, it's a funny one in the sense that there are two main flavours of the bird of prey, but they look identical. Because of course in space it's very, very hard to judge scale. So this ship can be the Burrell class, which is a scout ship, and that's what we see in Star Trek 3 and Star Trek 4. It's a smaller version. Or it can be a Cavort class cruiser. And the Cavort class might have been the ship that was in Undiscovered Country and other iterations of combat ships for the Klingons where they're going up against sort of Federation mainline cruisers. But as I say, it's hard to judge scale in space. And the bridges are slightly different in their representations, so you can kind of guess from that the bigger the bridge is, the bigger the overall ship is. But unless they're actually announced on screen, you know, that they've been scanned as a particular type of Klingon ship, it's very hard to judge it because you just can't tell, you know, how far apart they are from the Enterprise and so on. They have photon torpedo tube here. Disruptors, as I mentioned, on the wingtips. They're also described as having phasers sometimes, which puzzles me somewhat. And I'm not really sure where they would come from. I don't think she's got an aft torpedo launcher. I think the Klingons like to face their foes, because obviously they were a warrior race, so I guess that's not really a thing for them so much. But it's definitely a favourite of mine, I think, because it's got this sort of avian feel to it. I'll give it a little bit of a turn round now, so you can sort of see it in more detail as I turn it. But the detailing here is you know, exactly what I would expect from a Diamond Select product, because if I zoom in, you can see that on the underside of the wings here, you've got this sort of feather effect, and any sort of bird of prey model worth its salt will take that. So, for example, the Eagle Moss models have that as an effect underneath their wings as well, but their wings are static. So, in order to get this in Eagle Moss at small size, you have to have 3 of them to get different wing configurations. That's a little quirk of using the fixed models as rather than movable toys. But you've got to bear in mind here, this is supposed to be a toy. Ultimately, it's not a model, but it's a really great, you know, huge amount of detail on it for just a toy. I mean, you know, you really can't distinguish this and call it as between, you know, sort of the filmed models and this one. I don't think there's a lot to call really at all. I think this is terrific detail, given that it's also got the ability to shift the wings built into it. I think it's a terrific piece of engineering on Diamond Select's part to have sort of pulled this off as a concept. You can see there the sort of the engine detail at the rear as well, which again is impressive, because you just wouldn't necessarily expect to see that level of detail on a toy that's made ostensibly for kids. Now, this version is from 2012, maybe 2013. I'm going to show you a couple of boxes in due course, which it's just a strange thing, but there are 2 boxes for seemingly, you know, the identical item, and I don't know why that would have been, but that's the choice that they made with it. So what I'm going to do now is run you through the various effects that it can do, because this obviously is one of its USPs, is that it has the electronics, but it has speech as well as the electronics. So it's not just electronics. Well, so it is electronics, but it's actual captures from the films, as well as the sort of, you know, the ships, the sound effects of the ship itself would do. So let me just get her all in focus again, so you can get full benefit from this. There we go. I can zoom quite a way back. Actually, that might be more effective for this. Okay. So let's have a look at this.
I can see you, Kirk. Can you see me? Cry havoc, and let's slip the dogs of war.
It's particularly cool that with the disruptors firing at the same time.
I am constant as the northern star. Warrior to warrior. You do prefer it this way, don't you? To me or not to me. I can see you, Kirk. Can you see me?
I think we're nearly all the way through there. So the actual speech effects there are coming from Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, with Chang speaking. Now, this is probably a good point to jump into the box that this came in and just show you the box, I think. But you can get the general gist of just how much functionality they crammed into this. It really is quite impressive how much they put in. Now, I'd say I think there are a couple of other versions of this. One's the Bounty, which is the bird of prey that Kirk et al. Adapt for their own use. And I believe that one has landing feet. Now, there may also be, I think there's also a cloaked version of it as well. But this is the box that I got it from originally. from Gareth. So as you can see, it's a really nice big window box. So you get, you can. One of the things that obviously attracted me to it immediately was the fact that you can see the entirety of the bird of prey is visible through this big front window, and it has a try-me slot just in the front there, which is kind of what you'd expect. So I was immediately sort of drawn to that, and I just thought I've never seen a pre-built bird of prey like this, or indeed any at that point in time. I hadn't seen any pre-built Star Trek ship at this scale that was, sort of pre-painted and everything else that I could just play with, which was, seemed incredible to me. But of course, I don't know how widely these got released in the UK. I think the short answer is not very. So there was a good reason why I hadn't seen them outside of a specialist store. And it's another one of those really good reasons for going into a specialist store, just to see what they've actually got available, because you might see stuff that you would never have imagined was actually available because it only came out in the States. It's often the way of it. So it says here, features all of the following phrases and sound effects. I can see you, Kirk, can you see me? Cry havoc, let slip the dogs of war. I am constant as the northern star. You do prefer it this way, don't you? Warrior, to be or not to be. And then the various sort of cloaking sound effect, torpedoes firing, disruptors firing. Now, so on the back here, this sort of links back to what I was telling you about the different classes of bird of prey. It says length 110 meters, but it says brackets varies, which is, it doesn't mean that the actual ship itself doesn't vary. Although arguably you could say that when its wings are up, down, or in the middle, its size does actually vary. But I think that's also a reference to the fact that it could be a Burrell, it could be a Cavort. It's hard to tell. Dex 5 varies. Again, I think a reference to there being different types. And crew 12 to 36 varies, again, probably dependent on whether or not it's a tiny Burrell or a big Cavort. So this is kind of what you'd expect to see. Maximum speed warp 9.8. Now, I don't know about that. I'm in sort of two minds as to whether or not that would actually be a thing, because that might refer to it in old Trek terms, in which case it's not that fast. If that's in new Trek terms, that's very fast. So I would kind of go with the former. I think that's an old Trek speed rather than a new Trek speed. So the blurb there says, the most versatile ship in the Klingon fleet, the bird of prey was in use for over a century, with various classes of the vessels serving as scouts, raiders and patrol ships. Birds of prey would often engage in skirmishes with Federation ships, most frequently the USS Enterprise. Well, I think that's somewhat apocryphal, but at the end of the day, the bird of prey has been involved in several destructions of the Enterprise, and a sort of a fairly good roughing up of an Enterprise as well, and of the Excelsior indeed. So although the bird of prey is armed with phasers, photon torpedoes and disruptor cannons, its greatest weapon is its impenetrable cloaking device, which makes it invisible to scanners and even the naked eye, hence my intro, giving it an edge in any battle. The standard bird of prey cannot fire while cloaked, but an experimental model that had that capability was destroyed while under the command of the traitor General Chang. Another bird of prey was captured by the Federation after the death of Commander Krug, and for a time was commanded by Starfleet Admiral James T. Kirk. And that bird of prey also resurfaces in Picard, of course, as you might well be familiar with by now. So that bird of prey has a very, very, very long history in Star Trek terms. You can see down the bottom here as well other items from Diamond Select there. Now this is a great big chunky box. It is 42 centimetres wide to accommodate the bird of prey's wing, and about 20 centimetres or so deep. So it's a really, really big box. But I have another box, and this is the weird thing, because this is the one that mine came in, and it is dated 2013. So this is actually the second box in terms of time that I have, because I've also picked up this because I felt it would be rude not to at the price it was going for on eBay. And this seems to be exactly the same toy. It's exactly the same toy, but as you can tell, because I'm having to zoom back a bit, this box is taller. It's taller and wider but thinner because the bird of prey is being displayed in cruise mode and therefore flat. And it's just sort of, I don't understand why they did it, because there's only a year difference. So they released this one first in 2012 and then the one I just showed you in 2013. It's very, very odd. And this one is only 10 centimetres deep, but it's 50 centimetres wide. Now, I think that in itself gives a little clue as to why they might have changed the boxes, because I don't think this works, by the way. No. The button is slightly different colour, but otherwise it seems identical. And the listing here for what it actually does is identical, but I think these would have been too wobbly on shelves. I think they would have tilted over and fallen down off shelves really, really easily. So I think that might be why they chose to... and I also think as well, the bird of prey is really dark. You can't really see it. You know, they've obscured most of it by putting these panels here. So I think perhaps they goofed with the marketing side of it in terms of how they did it with this one. And that's why maybe they switched to this bigger box, which is more stable and shows you more of the ship. That's my theory, because they're both Starship Legends. All of the text on them is exactly the same. All of these images are exactly the same. I can't figure out another reason why they would have gone for a different approach. That's all. You know, that's my best guess. Because as you can see on the back here as well, even this text is exactly the same. So it's a really, I just don't understand. I can't think of another logical reason why they would have chosen to go with a different approach here. You know, other than perhaps it just wasn't selling as well in this box and they decided to change it up and try something different. But, you know, that's entirely up to them. Interestingly, the distribution was apparently handled in the UK, which again is just one of those things. Maybe I just wasn't looking at the right sort of time, but it does suggest that Diamond Select did have a UK distribution hub, as I believe they have now. So I guess you know, some of these would have come out in the UK. It's just not apparent as to just how widely they were spread. But certainly the ones that I've tried to get back, I have had birds of prey actually that have been available to me in the UK, but some of the other ships have been harder to find from UK sellers. But you know, it just depends what you happen to see on the day, of course. So I'm trying to think if I need to cover anything else. It's actually the second time I've done this, because the first time I did the video, none of my sound worked at all, which I didn't find out until afterwards. Possibly a function of just getting to grips with this new camera of mine. So I've started from scratch for you. But yeah, I mean, this is by far and away one of my favourite pickups in Star Trek terms, and indeed generally, I think, because you know, I would never have expected to get something like this. Because I didn't know it existed. And as I said before, you know, if you really want to sort of understand what's out there, I mean, yes, you can browse eBay for a bit, but at the end of the day, if you can also get into a dedicated store like Gareth, then, you know, you get the benefit of someone like him having the experience about what's out there, and, you know, they might be able to get stuff for you if you're interested in a particular item. But also you will just see stuff like this, because I mean, as soon as I spotted this, I was like, yeah, me, because I love my birds of prey. So I thought, yeah, I'm having that. I'm definitely not going to leave that, because it would be rude to, basically. So I definitely wholeheartedly endorse this as a sort of a great bird of prey option for you if you like your starships. Arguably, probably amongst the largest pre-painted, pre-built, sort of toy starships you can get in the Star Trek range. There's not a lot that really beats it out, although arguably, I mean, some of the Playmates are comparable, and that leads me into the fact that I do also have a Playmates bird of prey to show you in the next video. That I haven't seen many examples of at all, and again I had to bring it in from America without a box, because otherwise it would have been, you know, ridiculously expensive to try and do it. So that's another interesting one to look at, because it takes a slightly different approach, as Playmates and Diamond Select often do, with sort of the way in which it's presenting itself and then its play functions and so on. But again, it does come from a very different era as well. I mean, this guy's got LEDs and everything else because it's sort of early 2010s. So it's a relatively young toy for me. It's only been around 12 years at the time of recording. So actually, it's quite fresh, and that might explain why the build quality is so good. Because to be able to get the wings in all three positions is pretty remarkable, really, and still have it look as it should really on screen. So I think that's about all I've got to say about this one, really. I think I've probably waxed lyrical about it long enough, but I do have a spare one of these. So it may be that as I get to any sort of significant milestones, there might be one that gets given away, or I might sell one back to Gareth. You never know. But we'll see how we get on anyway, and hopefully the sound has worked this time, so I don't have to pull any of my remaining hairs off my head again. So on that note, I will leave it there. And as I say, do keep an eye open for another one, which will be the Playmates version of this, and possibly a comparison across the two as well. Like and subscribe to see the next iterations in the playlist, because I can now start moving into the next generation proper, which of course these are a crossover item 4, because the Bird of Prey appears in many places. Ironically, this is the primary antagonist ship for most of the movies of the original series era, because the Klingons were the established villains for the original series, whereas the Romulans were sort of in the background. They weren't as well known, and they just chose not to use them in the movies ultimately. Although I think there is some debate over whether or not this Bird of Prey would originally have been a Romulan Bird of Prey, because to me the coloration under the wings is more in keeping with the Romulan style of decorating their ships than it is the Klingon approach to ship decoration, which normally isn't there. So there's an interesting debate to be had around that as well. But on that bombshell, I will leave you. So as I say, do like and subscribe, and cheers for now.